Hey, did you know that fear is something that we can actually learn to enjoy? It becomes something that we don't realize just all the time. It's become the normal place to go, the normal place to be, the normal place to dwell in our thoughts and in our mind. Have you ever had those feelings where you just don't, think that you're going to be able to do it and something terrible is going to happen? You start to get goosebumps. You start to feel like your hair is raising up all over your body, and you're starting to wonder if you're able to do this particular thing because there's such a large obstacle, there's such a large issue, there's something that frightens you from being able to go to that next step. Well, we all have felt the emotion of fear, but I want to talk to you about how you can have the enjoyment of fear that stops you from actually overcoming fear. And what we actually mean is you can get to the point where you've actually learned to enjoy the cycle you go through of fear about certain things. And so you might think you don't want to have fear, but in fact, you've built a relationship with it. It's become commonplace to you. It becomes something that you understand more than you do courage. So if you understand something, even if it's not good, it becomes something that is known. So sometimes, it's like the person who you go into their room and stuff is all over the place, and they're all over the desk and all over here on the floor, and there's something over here on the cabinet, something over on the shelf. If someone goes in and says, hey, we want to try to help you out. Let's get all this organized. Let's get everything straightened up here for you. And as soon as you start touching things, they say, no, don't touch that. Don't touch that. That's right where I need to. No, leave those papers right there. Even though things are all over the place, it's become a norm, and they're comfortable with it being that way because they literally know where everything is at, even though it's all over the place. Well, did you know you can become comfortable and start to enjoy something that is not the way it should be, but it's what you know. It's comfortable. So we have to learn how to think differently about fear. And so I want to share with you an acronym that will really help you to understand some of the things that we need to deal with when it comes to, really trying to just understand, the four reasons that fear is paralyzing many of us. Now, I'm going to go to my whiteboard here, and I'm going to actually spell out the acronym fear. So we're going to spell out the acronym fear, and we're going to talk about these a little bit. So let's look at this. Now, one of the first things that I want to call out, let's start with the F in the word fear. And I want you to look at this as the word feed. Now, the reason that the word feed is important is because I want you to understand that we make a decision, right, to eat thoughts about fear. So what happens is, when we have certain things that are in us that make us afraid. Some people have different phobias. Some people have a fear of speaking, a fear of conflict, a fear of heights, a fear of success. That they're successful. People may put more pressure on them. Some people have a fear of being rejected. There's so many different, types of fear that someone may have. But when we get those thoughts, we make a choice whether or not we're going to feed on those thoughts. Now, there's an old saying that you can't stop the birds from flying above your head, but you can stop them from building a nest in your hair, right? So basically what we're saying is you can't stop all the thoughts you get, the initial thoughts that might be fear-based. But when you feed and you eat on those thoughts, you start to actually begin to move from just thoughts to emotion to then paralysis, where this emotion has started to bind you down and stop you from being able to move forward with anything that will allow you to take things forward or move things forward. So eating thoughts about fear is a big one, and we have to stop serving this up to ourselves, right? Some of us have this fear, right? It's like it's like having, an appetizer that is all about why it won't work. And then here comes the main course. And the main course is about seeing the example of when it doesn't work, how bad you're going to feel. And then you bring some dessert. And dessert is thinking about, even after this is over, how all your friends are going to view you. And you've run this whole scenario in your mind, and you're eating every piece of this meal that is a fear meal. And this meal and this feeding is helping to create the paralysis. Now, let's go further. Here's another key thing. Let's look at the E here. Another key thing I want you to know about is effective. Now, so one of the greatest dangers, right, that we can have is that, let's say, the delusion of still being effective while feeding on fear. Now, what do I mean by this? So, in essence, we talked about eating thoughts about fear. What happens is, so we eat these thoughts about fear, and what happens is we're so used to doing this, and so let me give you an example. You're so used to eating on those thoughts and about fear. So every time it's time for you to take action or take a leadership position or, have to do something in which you're called upon to step up, right? And so you find a way out of it all the time, right? You find a way out of it, right? You don't do it. You don't, step up. So then what happens is you go back to whatever you was doing. People just kind of keep moving forward. Life moves on. And there's this delusion that I'm still able to be effective while continuing to let fear, have its way with me, right? So you start to develop this delusion of still being effective while feeding the fear. So there's no necessity to change, because every time I get this fearful feeling and I run away from it, I'm still effective. I still get things done. I'm still able to do the things that are most important to me. I'm still able to go here and go there. People move on. I move on. Things still get done. So this is another thing that allows us to move into a paralysis state with fear, because there's this delusion that what appears to be effective is actually not effective, because in this effectiveness in your mind is a shrinking, dwarfing of yourself that is stopping you from growing. So because you're not thinking about growth, your measurement of effectiveness is based on the comfort zone that you've been in. So until you step out of that comfort zone, you're unaware that it's not really effective, because in your mind, it's effective within your comfort zone, within your space. You have to step out of that to see the dangers of what you're currently calling effective. Now, let's go to the next area here. And when you think about the A here, I want to talk about what I like to call anxiety. I'm going to say it's an anxiety illusion, right? So, like, it's an illusion. I think it's there, but it's not there, right? It's an illusion. Now, I want you to think about this. Remember, anxiety, let me define this a little bit. This is a negative feeling about a future outcome you can't control. Let's add that. So when you think about this, anxiety is different than true fear, right? So, or let's say danger. If there's a real danger, that means that there is something that is a literal threat to your safety, your health, your well-being, right? Fear also should be something that is tied to a real and present danger, right? Technically, is what should generate fear. Anxiety is when I have this negative feeling all over me, but it's not really based on something that is real. It's based on a future outcome, and there's no one who can control the future. No one. You can't control the future, good or bad. You can't say it's guaranteed I'm going to do anything, right? Anything can happen. And so we have to realize that the future is not promised to any of us. You can't say, I know for a fact that I'm going to build $1 million company in 5 years. You don't even know if you'll be here in 5 years, right? We can't guarantee that, right? And you can't guarantee you're going to lose everything and be bankrupt and not be able to provide for yourself in 5 years or 3 years or 5 months, even though if you have that fear. But the point is, neither one of those is something you can control. Neither one of them you can guarantee to come true. But anxiety is when we give present energy, right, to a future outcome that is not real, right? That is not promised. But you're giving energy to it currently, right? That's the problem. It's a current energy. It's a current use of resource, right? I'm actually using this resource of now, all of my energy, all in this space of anxiety, and it's paralyzing, right? So this is, again, what brings us to that paralysis. Now, let's go to another area here. Lastly, the fourth area is remember. And what are we remembering? Remember the worst. All right. So this is the tendency for someone to constantly think about what went wrong in the past. Okay. Now, when you keep remembering the worst, this also fuels fear, right? So whatever that thing is in front of you that you're dealing with, but you keep remembering the worst. And it doesn't have to always be your personal experience. You can remember the worst about something you heard. You remember the worst about something that happened to someone else, right? So if I was in a sport and I had to, I was playing baseball and it was my turn to bat, and I saw that someone before me in a similar situation, the score was tied 3-3, and it was this particular inning, and they struck out. And I remember how bad they felt and how embarrassed they were and how let down they were. And I'm about to get up and it's my turn. I'm in a similar situation. If I remember the worst and I think and I dwell on that, my fear will begin to rise. The inability for me to perform in that moment will become greater. And this is what we often do. We don't realize that we're always remembering the worst. We're always remembering the absolute worst thing that we can pull out of our memory bank that reminds us of what's not possible, right? So this is a danger. And so this is in essence what we don't want to do. So check this out. Think about this. You look back at the whiteboard here, we want to remember the cause of paralysis from fear. We don't want to feed on the thoughts that are all about fear, everything that promotes fear, everything that promotes being afraid to do what you need to do, right? We don't want the delusion that we're effective when we do things that still allow us to get this done or that done or live life, but we know we're still allowing fear to hold us back. We have to be able to see that what appears to be effective is not effective. We have to understand the illusion of anxiety because you cannot control the future. You don't know what will happen in the future, so you might as well live in anticipation versus anxiety. Anticipation is a positive feeling about a future outcome that you can't control. You still can't guarantee it, but you're going to live a better life thinking about anticipation of what could be instead of always thinking about what will go wrong. And lastly, we want to always rise above our own memories of things that would discourage us from doing our best. We have to begin to fight the tendency to really highlight and remember. Your brain is wired to remember the things that hurt you 10 times more, if not 100 times more, than the things that helped you, things that were great. So you always go, because you have a self-preserving brain. It's going to always try to find the thing that's a danger, that's a threat. So be aware of that so that you don't allow fear to come in and stop you from being your best self. I'm Michael E. Parker, and I hope you got a lot out of this. Remember, you are a CEO, and you can make the choice every single day not to live in fear, not to let anything paralyze you from being your best self, from being as great as you can be. Make sure that you don't just look at this as nice words and encouraging thoughts, but you realize every day it's a fight. It's a fight to actually rise above our fear so that we can actually move forward and get the results that we want, because we're doing the things that will get to those results. Remember, we charge, we expand, and we overcome until we reach the highest heights of achievement. And you can do it as long as you take the fight against fear one step at a time.